My name is Isabella Martin. I'm 27 years old, and for most of my life, my family treated me like the lesser daughter. My sister, Clarissa, was the star, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She had the grades, the friends, the confidence, and most importantly, she had my parents' unconditional approval.
Me?
I was the quiet one, the girl with her nose in books, working side jobs to cover things my parents refused to help me with. For years, I thought it was normal. I thought maybe all families had a favorite child. But over time, I realized something painful. In my family, love wasn't unconditional. It was conditional on success, on appearances, on being the one who made them look good. And since Clarissa had that role covered, there was no room for me. The breaking point came when I was 23. At the time, I was trying to start my own event planning business. I had saved every penny from waitressing and tutoring, and I finally felt ready to take the leap. But I needed a small loan to secure a tiny office space. So I swallowed my pride and asked my sister. She was already thriving in her corporate career, earning more money than I'd ever seen. She looked me dead in the eye and laughed. Isabella, you? An entrepreneur? You'd sink in a week. I'm not throwing away money on your little fantasies. I felt my cheeks burn, but before I could respond, she added, honestly, you should be thanking me. At least I'm telling you the truth before you embarrass yourself. I left her house that night shaking, my chest tight with humiliation. But inside, something shifted. Because if she thought I was going to crumble, she didn't know me at all. I found another way. I picked up extra shifts, worked mornings and nights, slept 4 hours a day, and poured everything into that business. For months, my life was chaos. Coffee became my blood, exhaustion my constant companion. But slowly, things began to take shape. Clients trickled in, then more. By 25, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And my sister? She didn't even know. Because I never told her. I wanted her to believe her words had destroyed me. I wanted her to laugh behind my back, certain I was still a failure. Because one day I knew I'd have my moment. And when it came, it would be bigger than anything she could imagine. That moment began with an invitation. It was Clarissa's idea, of course. She was throwing another one of her elaborate parties, and as always, I was invited more out of obligation than desire. But this time I didn't decline. I went. And when I walked into that room, hearing the snickers, seeing the raised eyebrows, I kept my head high. Because they had no idea what was coming. The night of Clarissa's party, I stood near the bar, holding a glass of water instead of champagne. My sister loved excess, and her parties were no exception. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, music pulsed faintly in the background, and her friends posed in corners like they were being photographed for a magazine. I could feel their eyes on me, pitying, mocking, dismissive. I heard whispers float across the room. There's Isabella, still single, still struggling. Didn't she try to start some business? I heard it flopped. Clarissa really outshines her, doesn't she? Every word cut like a knife. But instead of bleeding, I built armor. Because while they saw me as small, insignificant, the truth was, my little fantasy business had become a 6-figure company by its second year. By now, I was earning more than Clarissa ever had in her corporate job. I had employees, contracts, and the kind of freedom she could only dream of. But they didn't know that.
Not yet.
Clarissa spotted me from across the room, her red silk dress hugging her body like she was modeling. She strutted over, smiling that patronizing smile I'd known since childhood. Well, look who showed up, she said, her voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. I wasn't sure you'd come. You usually avoid these things, afraid people will ask what you're doing with your life. Laughter rippled from the women standing behind her. My cheeks warmed, but I forced myself to stay calm. No, Clarissa. I just don't always enjoy conversations where the goal is to tear someone down. Her smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. I'm just joking. But really, what are you up to these days? Still waitressing? Or did you finally give up on that silly little business idea? This was it. The moment I could have revealed everything. But I didn't. Instead, I gave her a small, unreadable smile. I'm managing. Her grin widened, mistaking my quiet for defeat. She patted my arm like I was a child. That's good. At least you're surviving. Inside, I almost laughed. Surviving? I'm thriving, Clarissa. More than you'll ever know. Later in the evening, I slipped away from the noise and found a quiet corner near the balcony. The city lights glittered outside, and for a moment, I let myself breathe. My best friend, Hannah, appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to me and whispered, "How are you not throwing that glass in her face?" I smirked. Because revenge is sweeter when it's served at the right time. Let her laugh. Let them all laugh. They have no idea what's coming. Hannah clinked her glass against mine. I can't wait to see their faces. Over the next year, I continued building my company. I signed contracts with luxury hotels, coordinated high-profile galas, and even landed a celebrity wedding. My name started to circulate in circles Clarissa would have killed to enter. And then, I met Daniel. He wasn't flashy, like the men Clarissa paraded around. He was grounded, kind, and sharp. A lawyer with an easy smile, and a way of making me feel like I mattered. For the first time, I wasn't just working for survival, I was building a life, a future, with someone who saw me for exactly who I was. When he proposed 2 years later, there was no hesitation in my yes. But there was also no hesitation in my plan. If I was going to marry Daniel, I wasn't just going to walk down the aisle. I was going to walk down it in a way no one would ever forget. On a yacht. My yacht. Planning the wedding was the most exhilarating project I'd ever taken on. Not only because I was marrying the man I loved, but because I knew it would be the reveal, the moment my family would finally see the truth. I rented a luxury yacht big enough to host over 100 guests. The decks gleamed under fresh polish, the interiors boasted crystal and mahogany, and the ocean itself would serve as the aisle. Every detail was perfection. White roses lining the railings, a string quartet waiting on deck, champagne chilled in silver buckets. And when the invitations went out, I made sure my family was on the list, including Clarissa. The responses came in quickly. Clarissa's was the most predictable. "Isabella, I didn't even know you could afford something like this."
Who's paying for it?
"Daniel? Must be nice to have someone finally take care of you." I didn't reply, because soon she'd know. It wasn't Daniel's money. It wasn't luck. It was me. And when that yacht appeared on the horizon, they'd all have to face the truth. The sister they mocked, the daughter they dismissed, the girl they cut off, was the woman who had built everything they thought she never could. The morning of my wedding, I stood in front of the mirror aboard the yacht, barely recognizing the woman staring back. I wore a gown of ivory silk, the kind of dress I once thought I'd only ever see in magazines. My chestnut hair, styled in soft waves, framed my face, and my hazel eyes sparkled with something deeper than joy, vindication. Because today wasn't just about marrying Daniel. It was about walking into the spotlight my family had denied me all my life. At the harbor, the guests began to arrive. A long white carpet led down the pier, the yacht towering at the end, gleaming under the morning sun. I had deliberately kept the yacht's details under wraps, only stating on the invitations, "Please join us for Isabella and Daniel's wedding, Harbor Dock." So when my relatives turned the corner and saw the yacht waiting, their reactions were everything I had dreamed of.
Gasps.
Whispers. Stunned silence. My cousin muttered, That's hers?" Someone else whispered, "No way. She couldn't afford that. Must be Daniel's." I almost wished I could have stood there among them just to watch their jaws drop. But Clarissa's reaction? That was the crown jewel. She arrived in a form-fitting navy dress, her arm hooked in our mother's. As soon as her eyes landed on the yacht, she stopped dead. Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to process what she was seeing. "Impossible," she hissed under her breath. "This must be rented. There's no way she—" Mom patted her arm, equally flustered. "You're right, darling. Isabella could never manage something like this. It has to be Daniel, but their voices trembled, because even they didn't sound convinced. Guests were ushered aboard by staff in crisp white uniforms. Champagne glasses clinked, soft music floated from the string quartet on deck, and the smell of roses mingled with the sea breeze. Everywhere I looked, people were wide-eyed, murmuring, "This is incredible." I didn't know Isabella was doing so well. Clarissa said she was struggling. Clearly not. The whispers spread like wildfire, and though I wasn't yet on deck, I could feel the shift in the air. For once, I wasn't the invisible one. I was the center. Up in my bridal suite, Hannah peeked out the window and smirked. "Your sister looks like she swallowed a lemon." I laughed softly, nerves and adrenaline mixing in my chest.
Good.
She needs the taste of reality. Hannah turned to me, her eyes warm. "You know, ISA, this isn't just revenge. This is your victory. You built this. You earned every petal on those roses, every inch of this yacht. Don't forget that when you walk out there." Her words sank deep, steadying me. She was right. This wasn't about showing them up, though, admittedly, that part felt sweet. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't the girl they'd dismissed anymore. When the ceremony began, I stepped onto the deck with my father, who, despite years of siding with Mom and Clarissa, couldn't hide the pride on his face as he walked me down the aisle. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not just because of the dress or the roses or the view of the endless ocean behind me, but because for the first time I held myself like I belonged. Because I did. As I reached Daniel, standing tall in his tailored suit, I saw Clarissa in the corner of my eye. Her smile was forced, her hands clutched tightly around her champagne glass. And when the officiant began, I caught the faintest whisper escape her lips. This should have been me. But it wasn't. It was me. The vows were simple, heartfelt, perfect. Daniel spoke about my strength, my resilience, my heart. I spoke about his kindness, his faith in me, the way he made me believe in love again. And when we kissed, the string quartet swelled, the guests erupted in applause, and I felt tears sting my eyes. Not just because I was married, but because in that moment, surrounded by family who had doubted me, I had never felt more certain of my worth. The reception unfolded in glittering elegance. Plates of seared salmon and roasted vegetables were served, champagne flowed endlessly, and laughter filled the deck. But the true climax came when one of Daniel's friends, drunk on excitement, raised his glass and said, "To Isabella, the real mastermind of today. Not only did she plan this breathtaking wedding, she owns this yacht too. Who knew event planning could buy a boat like this?" Silence fell. Then gasps. Then the stares. Dozens of eyes swung toward me, wide with shock. I stood, smiling softly, holding my glass.
Yes.
This yacht is mine. So is the business that paid for it. The one Clarissa said would never succeed. The ripple of whispers that followed was delicious. Clarissa's face drained of color. My mother's lips parted in stunned disbelief. And in that instant, the balance shifted forever. Because no amount of denial could erase what stood before them. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I was the woman who owned the ocean beneath their feet. The silence after my announcement hung thick in the air. The kind of silence where you could practically hear the gears grinding in everyone's heads as they recalibrated who I was. And then, as if on cue, Clarissa stood. She raised her glass, forcing a smile, though her eyes were sharp enough to cut glass. "Well, isn't that adorable?" she said loudly, her voice dripping with condescension. My little sister playing businesswoman, renting a yacht for a wedding just to make herself look important. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people looked away awkwardly, others leaned in, hungry for drama. I kept my hazel eyes steady on her. "It's not rented. It's mine. Every detail of this day was built with my company's success." Her laugh was shrill, brittle. "Oh, please, ISA. You expect us to believe that? You, who used to scrape by waiting tables, suddenly have enough money for this." She gestured dramatically at the glittering chandeliers above the deck, the polished wood, the servers moving gracefully among the tables. I set down my glass carefully, refusing to rise to her tone.
Yes.
Because while you were laughing at me, I was working. While you dismissed me, I was building. And while you assumed I was nothing without you, I was proving I never needed you. Gasps echoed around us. A few of my cousins exchanged glances, and I saw my aunt lean in to whisper something like, "Good for her." But Clarissa wasn't done. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the deck, her face flushed with wine and anger. "You're lying. You couldn't possibly have pulled this off without Daniel's money. Everyone knows that." Daniel, sitting beside me, stood calmly, his expression unreadable. "Actually, Clarissa, I had very little to do with this. Isabella owns this yacht. She built her company from the ground up. I'm proud of her and ashamed that her own family doesn't seem to be." The crowd erupted in whispers. My mother's face went pale, her lips pressed into a tight line. Clarissa froze, her confidence cracking. For once, she had no comeback. The rest of the reception carried on, though tension buzzed under the surface. Guests still danced, laughed, and clinked glasses, but all anyone wanted to talk about was me. And I let them. For years, I had been invisible at family gatherings. The lesser daughter, always in Clarissa's shadow. Now, when people whispered my name, it wasn't with pity, it was with awe. By midnight, I was exhausted but elated. Daniel and I slipped away from the crowd and stood at the edge of the deck, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. "You were incredible," he murmured, wrapping his arms around me. I leaned into him, my eyes closing. I wasn't just standing up to her, Daniel. I was standing up to every time she and Mom told me I wasn't enough. He kissed the top of my head. "And tonight, you proved you're more than enough. You always were." But even then, I knew Clarissa wouldn't let it end there. My sister had always been the type to win at any cost. And if she couldn't, she'd rather burn the house down than watch someone else succeed. I was right, because a week later, she showed up at my office. I was sitting behind my desk, going over contracts, when the receptionist buzzed me. "Your sister is here. She says it's urgent." I sighed. "Send her in." Clarissa stormed through the door, her designer heels striking the floor like gunshots. She looked immaculate, but her eyes were wild. "You humiliated me," she spat, slamming her hands on my desk. "Do you have any idea how pathetic I looked in front of everyone?" I folded my hands calmly. "Clarissa, you humiliated yourself. All I did was tell the truth." Her lips curled. "You're nothing without me. You only succeeded because you were trying to prove me wrong. Without me, you'd still be nothing." Her words stung, because in a way, they were true. Her cruelty had been the fire that forged me. But instead of letting that diminish me, I let it strengthen me. I leaned forward, my hazel eyes locking onto hers. "Then maybe I should thank you. Because every insult, every laugh, every time you cut me off, it made me work harder. And now I'm here. With everything you said, I'd never have. And you're still clinging to the only power you ever had, trying to tear me down." Her face flushed deep red. "You'll regret this, Isabella. You've turned this family against me." "No," I said softly. "You did that all on your own." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I sat back in my chair, my chest heaving, but inside me was something stronger than fear, relief. For years, I'd wondered what it would be like to stand toe-to-toe with her and not crumble. Now I knew, and it felt like freedom. After Clarissa stormed out of my office, I expected a few weeks of silence. But silence was never her style. Instead, the calls started coming not from her but from distant cousins, aunts, and even old family friends. Each one carried the same awkward tone. "Isabella, I heard Clarissa says you exaggerated about the yacht. Your mom mentioned Daniel must have paid for most of the wedding. Someone said your company is just a front, that you're in debt." Every rumor dripped with my sister's venom. It was classic Clarissa. If she couldn't beat me to my face, she'd poison me behind my back. At first, I let it go. I knew the truth. My clients knew the truth. Daniel knew the truth. That should have been enough. But then one of my employees approached me, nervously clutching her tablet. Isabella, someone's been commenting on our company's social media pages, accusing you of fraud, saying you don't really own the business. My blood went cold, because now Clarissa wasn't just attacking me, she was attacking my work, the thing I had built with my bare hands. And that, I wouldn't tolerate. I called my mother, demanding an explanation. Mom, have you heard what Clarissa's been saying? Her sigh crackled through the phone. Isabella, why can't you just let her feel important? She's hurting. You embarrassed her. I nearly dropped the phone. I embarrassed her? Mom, she's slandering me. She's trying to ruin my reputation. Mom's voice was ice. Clarissa is your sister. Family comes before pride. If you were a little less showy, maybe she wouldn't feel the need to lash out. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Family doesn't mean letting someone destroy me, Mom. If you can't see that, then maybe you've been enabling her all along. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. That night, Daniel found me pacing the living room. You're letting them get in your head, he said gently. Your clients know the truth. Your employees know the truth. Your friends know the truth. I know, I whispered. But she won't stop.
She's turning my own family against me.
And I'm tired of being the quiet one. Maybe it's time they heard my side, loud and clear. Daniel's smile was small but proud. Then let's give them something they can't ignore. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. My cousin announced she was hosting a family luncheon, something she did once a year to bring everyone together. It was the kind of event my mother and Clarissa never missed. And this time neither would I. When I arrived, the chatter in the room dipped. I could feel the tension, the curious glances, the whispers. Clarissa was already there, sitting beside Mom like a queen with her advisor. Her smile widened when she saw me, as if she'd been waiting to watch me squirm. Isabella, she purred, her voice loud enough for the entire room. We were just talking about your yacht. Some of us think it's quite impressive. Others think it's a shame you have to embellish the truth to get attention. The table chuckled nervously. I set my purse down calmly, taking my seat. My hazel eyes locked on hers. There's no embellishment, Clarissa. I own that yacht. And if anyone doubts it, I brought proof. Gasps rippled through the room as I pulled a slim folder from my bag. Inside were the official ownership papers, my name in bold letters. I laid them on the table for everyone to see. This is the deed. This is the business license. This is the bank statement. Every rumor you've spread, consider it disproven. The silence was deafening. Clarissa's face turned scarlet. You're unbelievable, she snapped. Dragging paperwork to a family lunch? That's pathetic. I leaned forward, my voice calm but razor-sharp. What's pathetic is spending your energy trying to tear down your sister because you can't stand that she succeeded without you. Eyes widened around the table. A few people nodded subtly. My aunt whispered, she's right. Mom finally spoke, her tone clipped. Isabella, must you air our family drama like this? It's embarrassing. I turned to her, my heart pounding but my voice steady. What's embarrassing is how you always protect her at my expense. What's embarrassing is how you've let her bully me for years. What's embarrassing is pretending I didn't earn every bit of what I have. For once, Mom had no retort. The rest of the lunch was stiff, awkward, filled with half-hearted conversation. But the damage to Clarissa's facade was done. When I left, several relatives pulled me aside quietly. Good for you, Isabella. We always knew you were stronger than they gave you credit for. About time someone put her in her place. I walked out with my head high, my documents back in my bag, and a sense of power I never felt before. Because I hadn't just defended myself. I had flipped the script. And for the first time, my family wasn't laughing at me. They were seeing me. That night, I stood on the deck of my yacht with Daniel, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Do you think she'll stop now? I asked. He wrapped his arms around me, kissing the top of my head. Maybe. But even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter. You don't need their approval anymore. You've already won. I looked out at the water, my reflection shimmering on the waves. For so long, I'd believed winning meant getting their love, their recognition. But standing there, I realized winning meant something else entirely. It meant knowing I was enough, even without them. And that was the sweetest victory of all. After the family luncheon, Clarissa went quiet.
Too quiet.
At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, she had finally gotten the message. I hoped the sight of me placing the yacht deed and business papers in front of everyone had been enough to silence her. But with Clarissa, silence was never surrender. It was plotting. The first sign came a week later. One of my clients, a luxury hotel manager, called me with concern. "Isabella, I received an email from someone claiming to be a former employee of yours. They said you're in financial trouble, that your business is unstable. Is this true?" My stomach dropped. Ask them to forward the email. When I read it, my hands shook with rage. The wording was vicious but familiar, laced with phrases only one person would use. It was Clarissa. She hadn't just been spreading rumors to family anymore. She was trying to sabotage my livelihood. I could have ignored it. Could have trusted that my track record with clients would speak louder than her lies. But this wasn't just about me. This was about the employees who depended on me. The clients who trusted me. The company I had bled to build. So, I decided if Clarissa wanted war, she was going to get it. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. He flipped through the forwarded email, his brows raised. "This is defamation," he said plainly. "And it's targeted at your business. We can file for damages. At the very least, we can send a cease and desist that will scare her into stopping." A part of me hesitated. This was my sister. Taking legal action felt heavy. But then I thought about every insult, every laugh, every time she told me I was nothing. I thought about her barging into my office, screaming that I owed my success to her cruelty. And I realized she had never been my sister in the way that mattered. She had been my enemy in disguise. "Do it," I said firmly. The cease and desist letter went out the next day. The fallout was immediate. My mother called me within hours, furious. "How dare you drag your family into court threats?" Clarissa was just upset. She didn't mean any harm. I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Mom, she tried to destroy my business. Do you understand that? That's not just upset. That's malicious." Mom's voice cracked with desperation. "She's your sister. You can't just treat her like some stranger." I closed my eyes, my voice low but sharp.
"No, Mom."
She treated me like a stranger long before I ever stood up to her. For the first time, my mother had no reply. She hung up on me instead. Days later, Clarissa appeared at my office again. This time, her arrogance was gone. She looked pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her designer bag. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "A legal notice? To your own blood?" I stood behind my desk, my hazel eyes steady. "Blood doesn't give you the right to ruin my life. You crossed a line, Clarissa. And now you're facing the consequences." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for her like I once might have. Because I knew they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of being caught. She left without another word. And for the first time, I felt something I never thought I'd feel around her.
Peace.
A week later, my lawyer confirmed she had signed an agreement. She would cease all slander, public or private, or face legal consequences. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was silence. And silence was victory. That evening, Daniel and I celebrated by having dinner on the yacht. The sunset painted the horizon in streaks of gold and pink, and I leaned against the railing, breathing in the salty air. Daniel slid his arm around my waist. "How does it feel?"
I smiled faintly.
"Like I finally shut a door that should have been closed years ago." He kissed my temple. "You didn't just shut it, Isabella. You locked it, sealed it, and threw away the key. She can't touch you anymore." I exhaled deeply, letting the truth sink in. For so long, I had been chasing their approval, desperate for scraps of love, hungry for validation. But I didn't need it anymore. I had my business, my husband, my peace. And the knowledge that no matter how much they had laughed, no matter how many times they tried to cut me down, I had risen higher than they ever dreamed. In the weeks that followed the cease and desist, my life grew quieter. Not in the lonely way it used to feel, but in the kind of quiet that felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. No more late-night calls from Mom berating me for hurting Clarissa. No more whispered rumors reaching my inbox. No more footsteps of my sister barging into my office, demanding the stage.
Just peace.
I started filling that silence with things I once thought were out of reach. In the mornings, I walked the yacht deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise ripple across the water. Sometimes Daniel joined me, sometimes I walked alone, but every time I felt the same thing. This was mine. In the afternoons, I poured my energy into new projects. My company expanded to other cities, and younger women in business began reaching out to me for mentorship. They saw me not as the forgotten sister, but as a woman who had built her empire brick by brick. And in the evenings, Daniel and I made our home together, laughing in ways I never thought possible in my parents' house. It wasn't just a new chapter. It was a new book entirely. But every now and then, the past crept back. At a cafe one morning, I ran into my aunt. She sat down across from me, her voice low. Clarissa hasn't been the same since the wedding. She feels like she's lost everything. I sipped my coffee slowly, choosing my words with care. She didn't lose it. She gave it away, every chance to treat me with kindness, every opportunity to build instead of destroy. My aunt nodded sadly. And your mom, she still doesn't understand. I smiled faintly. Maybe she never will. But I do. And that's enough. For once, I didn't feel the need to chase after their approval. Their misunderstanding wasn't my burden anymore. The true moment of closure came months later. I was attending a charity gala, ironically, one my company had been hired to organize. The room was full of powerful people, clients, and investors. And across the hall, I saw Clarissa. She wasn't glowing in designer dresses anymore. She looked tired, thinner, her smile brittle. For a brief second, our eyes met. She looked away first. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to confront her. I didn't need another victory speech, another round of proof. Because the yacht, the wedding, the business, those weren't the real revenge. The real revenge was standing in that room, surrounded by respect I had earned, while she stood in the shadows, invisible for the first time. Back on the yacht that night, Daniel and I sat on the deck. The stars spread across the sky like diamonds. "Do you ever think about them?" he asked quietly. I nodded. Sometimes. Not with anger anymore. More like gratitude, in a strange way. He raised an eyebrow. I laughed softly. If Clarissa hadn't cut me off, I might never have fought this hard. If Mom hadn't dismissed me, I might have settled for less. They tried to break me, but all they did was make me unbreakable. Daniel kissed me gently. "That's why I love you. You turn pain into power." I leaned against him, closing my eyes as the waves lapped gently against the hull. And I realized he was right. I had spent years believing their laughter defined me. But now I knew the truth. Their laughter was nothing. My success was everything. And as the yacht swayed softly under the stars, I whispered to myself, this is the life they said I'd never have. And it's only the beginning. Because the sweetest revenge isn't shouting back. It's living a life so full, so free, so undeniable, that the people who doubted you are forced to choke on their own disbelief. And I was finally living mine.